Verses 1 to 6. These travels of Paul, which are thus briefly related, if all in them had been recorded that was memorable and worthy to be written in letters of gold, the world would not contain the books that would have been written, and therefore we have only some general hints of occurrences, which therefore ought to be the more precious. Here is I. Paul's departure from Ephesus. He had tarried there longer than he had done at any one place since he had been ordained to the apostleship of the Gentiles, and now it was time to think of removing, for he must preach in other cities also, but after this, to the end of the scripture history of his life, which is all we can depend upon, we never find him breaking up fresh ground again, nor preaching the gospel where Christ had not been named, as hitherto he had done, Rom 15:20, for in the close of the next chapter we find him made a prisoner, and so continued, and so left, at the end of this book. 1. Paul left Ephesus soon after the uproar had ceased, looking upon the disturbance he met with there to be an indication of providence to him not to stay there any longer. v1. His removal might somewhat appease the rage of his adversaries, and gain better quarter for the Christians there. Currenti sit furori, it is good to lie by in a storm. Yet some think that before he now left Ephesus he wrote the first epistle to the Corinthians, and that his fighting with beasts at Ephesus, which he mentions in that epistle, was a figurative description of this uproar, but I rather take that literally. 2. He did not leave them abruptly and in a fright, but took leave of them solemnly. He called unto him the disciples, the principal persons of the congregation, and embraced them, took leave of them, saith the Syriac, with the kiss of love, according to the usage of the primitive church. Loving friends know not how well they love one another till they come to part, and then it appears how near they lay to one another's hearts. 2. His visitation of the Greek churches, which he had planted, and more than once watered, and which appear to have laid very near his heart. 1. He went first to Macedonia, v1, according to his purpose before the uproar, ch 19:21, there he visited the churches of Philippi and Thessalonica, and gave them much exhortation, v2. Paul's visits to his friends were preaching visits, and his preaching was large and copious. He gave them much exhortation, he had a great deal to say to them, and did not stint himself in time. He exhorted them to many duties, in many cases, and, as some read it, with many reasonings. He enforced his exhortation with a great variety of motives and arguments. 2. He stayed 3 months in Greece, v2, 3, that is, in Achaia, as some think, for thither also he purposed to go, to Corinth, and thereabouts, ch 19:21, and, no doubt, there also he gave the disciples much exhortation, to direct and confirm them, and engage them to cleave to the Lord. 3. The altering of his measures, for we cannot always stand to our purposes. Accidents unforeseen put us upon new counsels, which oblige us to purpose with a proviso. 1. Paul was about to sail into Syria, to Antioch, whence he was first sent out into the service of the Gentiles, and which therefore in his journeys he generally contrived to take in his way, but he changed his mind, and resolved to return to Macedonia, the same way he came. 2. The reason was because the Jews, expecting he would steer that course as usual, had waylaid him, designing to be the death of him, since they could not get him out of the way by stirring up both mobs and magistrates against him, which they had often attempted. They contrived to assassinate him. Some think they laid wait for him, to rob him of the money that he was carrying to Jerusalem for the relief of the poor saints there, but, considering how very spiteful the Jews were against him, I suppose they thirsted for his blood more than for his money. 4. His companions in his travels when he went into Asia, they are here named, v4. Some of them were ministers, whether they were also or no is not certain. Sopater of Berea, it is likely, is the same with Sosipater, who is mentioned Rom 16:21. Timothy is reckoned among them, for though Paul, when he departed from Ephesus, v1, left Timothy there, and afterwards wrote his first epistle to him thither, to direct him as an evangelist how to settle the church there, and in what hands to leave it, see 1 Tim 1:3, 3:14, 15, which epistle was intended for direction to Timothy what to do, not only at Ephesus where he now was, but also at other places where he should be in like manner left, or whither he should be sent to reside as an evangelist, and not to him only, but to the other evangelists that attended Paul, and were in like manner employed, yet he soon followed him, and accompanied him, with others here named. Now, one would think, this was no good husbandry, to have all these worthy men accompanying Paul, for there was more need of them where Paul was not than where he was, but so it was ordered, 1. That they might assist him in instructing such as by his preaching were awakened and startled, wherever Paul came, the waters were stirred, and then there was need of many hands to help the cripples in. It was time to strike when the iron was hot. 2. That they might be trained up by him, and fitted for future service, might fully know his doctrine and manner of life. 2 Tim 3:10. Paul's bodily presence was weak and despicable, and therefore these friends of his accompanied him, to put a reputation upon him, to keep him in countenance, and to intimate to strangers, who would be apt to judge by the sight of the eye, that he had a great deal in him truly valuable, which was not discovered upon the outward appearance. v. His coming to Troas, where he had appointed a general rendezvous of his friends. 1. They went before, and stayed for him at Troas, v5, designing to go along with him to Jerusalem, as Trophimus particularly did, ch 21:29. We should not think it hard to stay a while for good company in a journey. 2. Paul made the best of his way thither, and, it should seem, Luke was now in company with him, for he says we sailed from Philippi, v6, and the first time we find him in his company was here at Troas, ch 16:11. The days of unleavened bread are mentioned only to describe the time, not to intimate that Paul kept the Passover after the manner of the Jews, for just about this time he had written in his first epistle to the church at Corinth, and taught, that Christ's is our Passover, and a Christian life our feast of unleavened bread, 1 Co 5:7, 8, and when the substance was come the shadow was done away. He came to them to Troas, by sea, in 5 days, and when he was there stayed but 7 days. There is no remedy, but a great deal of time will unavoidably be lost in traveling to and fro, by those who go about doing good, yet it shall not be put upon the score of lost time. Paul thought it worthwhile to bestow 5 days in going to Troas, though it was but for an opportunity of 7 days' stay there, but he knew, and so should we, how to redeem even journeying time, and make it turn to some good account.